So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you some updates, as Vesa said, from what we did in 2025. I'm going to talk a little bit about it. I see bed of nails here. I'm really loving that. I don't know how to interpret it, though. So if you want to add some more data to that, please, that would be great. Okay, so, I want to start just by saying thank you from the entire SharePoint Embedded crew. If you're new to this call or this is the first time that you're hearing about SharePoint Embedded, some of these names might be new to you, but we have a great crew that is helping customers around the world understand what SharePoint Embedded is, understand how to use it. And you can reach all of us at this SharePoint Embedded at Microsoft.com. Now, I should point out that there are many other people behind the scenes who are helping this. People who are kind of deep in the engineering stack, people who are working in the search section, and of course, people who are working with us across Copilot and the various APIs, including the ones that Paulo just demonstrated. So lots going on here. We've been all around the world with you in 2025, and I have a big asterisk because we didn't hit Latin America, APAC, or Africa. So we missed some big parts of the world, but we've been to a lot of places as we talk with you. And it's been a lot of fun to meet you, understand what your points of view on SharePoint Embedded are, understand what your interest is. And I wanted to actually just post a quick picture because we just got back. Steve is actually on the plane right now. Coming back from ESPC, where he and Shreyas had a chance to talk with a great group about what SharePoint Embedded is. They were actually in the big auditorium there, Vesa, which is amazing because anytime you get the whole thing up there on the screen is super fun. And of course, earlier this year, we were at other conferences. So we've been at Ignite and at Build and at Airlift, ATL TechCon. We also did the North American Collaboration Summit talking about SharePoint Embedded. So although we're a relatively new product, we're definitely telling the story in as many places as we can. Now, the fundamental truth that we are addressing is that when you're working in an organization, documents are everywhere. And I'm going to guess that everybody on this call has experienced this reality. It's not just in SharePoint Embedded. People have documents, or not just in SharePoint Online, I mean. People have documents which are stored as part of various ISV applications. The average enterprise has something like 4 non-SharePoint Online ECM systems that are out there storing documents and doing something. And there's a big problem when you have all this. And it is that, you now have all this skew around these critical capabilities in terms of the way that you're working with documents and files. So these critical capabilities come down to security, AI, your ability to collaborate, your ability to be globally compliant with what it is that you're doing. And that's really where SharePoint Embedded comes in. So SharePoint Embedded is an API-only version of SharePoint's document management capabilities. It's not all of SharePoint, it's the document management capabilities. And the whole idea is that it creates a universal document layer fully integrated with your most strategic platform, Microsoft 365, and it delivers Microsoft 365 services through whatever app you're integrating it into. These are things like Copilot, Purview Compliance, any E3 and E5 security capabilities that you might have automatically apply, all the core storage capabilities. And it does all of this as an Azure service. So it's actually storing your documents inside Microsoft 365, but outside SharePoint. And I'll show you a little bit more about how that works in just a minute. So if you think about it, there's a lot that is in SharePoint Embedded for, just a huge variety of personas. And I'm going to guess that on the call today, out of, the 181 people that we have on here right now, we have people who fall into each one of these categories, people who are looking at this from all different angles. I always joke that this is like the Akira Kurosawa movie Rashomon, which if you haven't seen it, is, about a murder that takes place. And, there's 12 different points of view about how to look at it. And so, document management is a little bit like that. Everybody has a different type of concern about, how they're going to manage documents, how they're going to do that reliably over time. And what SharePoint Embedded allows you to do is it allows you to use your Microsoft 365 trusted services, the capabilities that you know and trust, to manage documents for every app. That's really what it comes down to. Now, we've been talking about this in a wide variety of ways, and what we have landed on after talking to customers as we've traveled all around the world is this. You can supercharge Copilot with SharePoint Embedded. So SharePoint Embedded quickly brings documents online and up to date with security, Copilot, Microsoft 365 compliance, Office collaboration, and a whole lot more for every app and agent. And so as we're all kind of going through this big transition together, this transition from kind of standard interaction with documents to AI-powered interaction to agent-based interaction, SharePoint Embedded plays this critical role. It helps you move all of those documents outside of whatever systems don't have these capabilities and into a standard platform so that you have all of these capabilities quickly and easily as part of whatever app you're working with. Now, as I said before, this is outside of SharePoint Online, but still inside Microsoft 365. And we have these customers right here, some of the ones that we're working with. These are just the ones who signed up and said, yes, you can use our logo. I've talked a lot about M-Files. M-Files is an ECM provider. They're an ISV. They actually provide enterprise content management. And what they're doing is they're standardizing on SharePoint Embedded precisely so that they can help their customers through this revolution that's happening right now. Kantar and ENI, these are both enterprises that are using us. They're using us for different use cases. But, really, in every case, it boils down to how do you get documents out of whatever silo they're in so that you can use them. Okay, Elliot, thank you very much for files. I shouldn't look at the chat while I'm talking. I'm very distracted now. This is very good. I like it when Homer Simpson shows up. But anyway, so there are enterprises that are using this to do exactly what you would expect, right? They're trying to take these documents, which are stored outside of M365, and bring them into a modern platform so that they can do everything they want to on them. Now, when you think about what this looks like, we have this core innovation that's really driving this, and it boils down to this notion of partitions. We don't talk about it a lot, but Microsoft 365 is functionally a partitioned system. We end up with the storage capability, and SharePoint Online is one partition. OneDrive is another partition, right? We're using the same storage capability, but they're logically isolated, they're separated. And what SharePoint Embedded is it's a new partition in M365. You interact with it with your graph APIs, so there's no user experience as part of it. So this is what I mean when I say it's stored inside Microsoft 365, but outside of SharePoint Online. So it's perfect for whatever apps you're developing that are custom apps. Now, we have a great new innovation that's also part of this. It's a new document management primitive, because remember, SharePoint Embedded is your document management capabilities from SharePoint Online. It's not all of SharePoint Online, it's the document management capabilities. And file storage containers are designed to be lightweight. They're specifically designed for apps, so you can have many of them. We talk about being able to have 100,000 of them, but the reality is you can have 1 million of them or 2 million of them. We have one customer who's talking to us about having 12 million of them. And so, that 12 million is still something which is a couple years away as we're working on making sure that we can scale out to meet customer demand. But at the same time, for the vast majority of customers, you can have whatever you want. And this means that in code, it's easy for you to model your security boundaries, your business constructs, and you don't have to do any kind of weird gymnastics, in terms of like creating a file storage container and then creating a bunch of subfolders. Anytime you need to, you can essentially just instantiate a new file storage container. So it's a new way, actually, of managing documents as part of whatever your apps you have. So there's a lot of ways that we can talk about the features, but the short version is that the M365 features you know and love, those come through when you store your documents in SharePoint Embedded. And so a good one that people talk to us about a lot is collaboration. They want to make sure that they have this one-click collaboration experience. When you're working with a document which is stored outside of SharePoint Online, this is actually very difficult. And so, you end up going through some interesting gymnastics again around the question of like, let's download a document, let's upload a document, then let's work on it, that kind of thing. And in this case, you just get that one-click collaboration experience, which I'll show you here in just a second. Copilot, I'm going to show you this. Everything's automatically included in Copilot, and of course, compliance and core storage. And we can go pretty deep on all of these, but the model that you should have in your head is that for all of these documents which are stored offline someplace or outside of Microsoft 365 someplace, it's easy for you to bring these into Microsoft 365 to get your Microsoft 365 capabilities as part of any app that you're working on. Now, I also like to talk about Copilot 6 ways with SharePoint Embedded, because Copilot is obviously a very dynamic system. I love Paulo's demo. It shows, some of the flexibility with Copilot right now. So you can use SharePoint Embedded content in M365 Copilot Chat. in your in-app Copilot chat, SharePoint Embedded Custom Agent, which I'll show you. You can use it with the Retrieval API. That's one of the APIs that Paula wasn't able to show. You can use it in Azure AI Foundry. That is actually here coming soon, and Copilot Studio is coming soon. And so there's lots of flexibility as we transition over to this AI-driven workflows for everything about how you can harness the data which is stored in SharePoint Embedded very easily. Okay, I'll show you a quick demo. So if you're brand new to SharePoint Embedded, this is going to give you kind of everything that you want. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by looking at our containers. And so this is the file storage container system that I was talking about before. So when you're thinking about this new file and document management primitive, I only have, I guess it's 11 of them in here, but you can have 100,000, you can have 1,000,000 of them, right? And it's up to your app how those are displayed, how those are managed. In this app, this is just a simple vibe-coded app. I built it with GitHub Copilot agents, and basically, it's just designed to show you a web interface. But we have customers that are doing this entirely as a web service. There is no user interface that they built on top of this. They basically tie everything to a ServiceNow case, and so ServiceNow cases are the user interface for their SharePoint embedded documents. So you have tons of flexibility. So I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to click on open for this one, and it's now going to list documents. Now, for those of you who like APIs, let me show you the APIs. For those of you who don't like APIs, I'll be back in just a minute. But you can see we're just using standard graph calls. There's nothing special in here. And so if I look at this top one, you can see it's got this graph and it's looking at drives, and it's got a drive ID in there, and it's doing children. So if you are used to working with the Graph API and you're used to working with drives and drive items, you're going to be very comfortable in SharePoint Embedded. The request has the authorization header that you would expect, and the response is the regular OData that you would expect. Now notice we have this fun web URL right here. This is the magic that actually powers that one-click collaboration. Okay, everybody who doesn't like APIs, come on back. I'm going to close this. And what we're going to do is we're going to do that one-click collaboration. Okay, so here's the click. It's going to open up Word. Now, if I had my system configured this way, it would actually open up in the desktop app. I don't have my system configured that way because I have a sort of a mess of identities here. But this is just working on the regular old Word. This is not a subset of Word. It is not a specialized version of Word. All the at mentions work, presence indicators work, comments and sharing work. And you can see it's just changing everything in real time. So I can say, hello, Microsoft 365 community, right? And you'll see up here it's doing the saving thing exactly like you would expect, right? And so if I close that and I come back into it, boom, here we are. We have everything saved in there. Now, again, because you are used to Microsoft 365, this doesn't seem special. However, when you're working with documents which are stored as part of any other app, this is very difficult to do. SharePoint Embedded delivers this through any app that you want to. So if you want to bring that document storage for whatever app you're working with into the Microsoft 365 modern world, SharePoint Embedded is the tool that lets you do that. Okay, so there's tons of stuff that we could look at in here. It has all of the ECM capabilities that you would expect, from version history to conversions to previewing. There are metadata capabilities in here, and of course you can search on metadata, etc. I always like to show the versions on this one because this is the one that I do, most of my demos on. And so you see that I've got a whole bunch of different versions here, which is super fun. Obviously, the rest of them that I'm not working with as much, I don't get quite the same versions. But if I wanted to here, I can also preview things, right? So preview comes built in for more than 300 file types. And so it's dead easy to work with almost any type of data that you want to work with. Okay. So that's a quick demo of that. I'm going to switch over now to the Retrieval API. Now, again, if you like APIs, you're going to love this section. If you don't like APIs, bear with me just a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say, tell me about banks, right? And I'm doing this just because I happen to know that we have some data in here. And so it's going to go out and it's going to use the Copilot Retrieval API to access our semantic query directly. And you can see that it gives us these retrieval hits. It tells us what the document is, and it gives us the extracts, which tells us the bank information, right? Now, I actually want to go in and I want to look at the API Explorer here because Since this is an API call, the whole goal is that you can use this in whatever agentic experience you want to develop. And that includes Azure AI Foundry agentic experiences. So you'll see that we're just posting over to the Retrieval API. We have the regular authorization that you would expect. And now this is where it starts to get special. So you see the query string in here. Tell me about the banks, right? I guess I just said me about banks. That's some great typing on my part. You can see our data source is SharePoint Embedded. And then we have a data source configuration where we're putting in what's called a container type ID. Don't worry too much about that. It's part of working with SharePoint Embedded. When you are working with SharePoint Embedded, you're going to know what a container type ID is. And then, of course, we say, hey, give us 10, maximum of 10 results, etc. So exactly what you saw in the form. And then we start to get the things back, right? And so here on our retrieval hits, you see we get our different extracts, right? So we have slide 1, slide 11, right? And then we have a different one here, which only has one of them, but it gives you the relevant score and everything else. So this is an incredibly powerful tool. Now, I said that we can do Copilot 6 ways. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do that same query actually in Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot chat. I'm just going to say, tell me about banks. And the funny part here is that because the context is different, what Microsoft 365 Copilot is going to do is it's now going to do two things. It is both going to say, hey, here's the general information about banks. You just said, tell me about banks. So I'm going to educate you about banks. And then it's going to come in and say, hey, we also have some interesting information here within our enterprise, right? And so it's able to do both the general stuff that you would expect from an LLM, and then also the more specific stuff that is related to exactly what's going on in your enterprise. And so there's lots of different ways to access the data which is stored as part of SharePoint Embedded. Okay, in the 2 minutes I have left, I'm going to give you a couple of resources. I think I'm sharing this. There we go. We saw a very quick demo, so there's a bunch of stuff going on in here. I didn't actually show you the Entra in action, but it does depend on Microsoft Entra ID. So if you're used to using that, you're going to know how it works. Graph API, you saw that. One-click collaboration, preview. It has a special agent that we ship with this, which is very similar to creating the custom conversations like Apollo did inside SPFX. It's a little different, but it's the same basic idea. We saw the Copilot chat, and we saw how we can do versions, talked about metadata, all that good stuff. Now, when I think about this, broadly speaking, Copilot has this incredible capability to merge data from across systems. And what SharePoint Embedded lets you do is it lets you actually do that across custom apps that are out there. And so Boulder Innovations, this is the demo app that I was showing you. You're able to bring information in from that. If you have ISVs that are using SharePoint Embedded, such as mFiles or AvePoint, who I talked about, you're able to then also get information from there. So Copilot ends up being this single pane of glass, accessing all of these data sources for all the information that's most important to you. And SharePoint Embedded is a great way to do this for apps which are not part of your core app system. Okay, we have a bunch of stuff coming in Azure AI Foundry, but we're about out of time, so I'm not going to go in deep. Watch for this. It's super cool if you're an Azure AI developer. Our Power Automate connectors are going to be GA either a little bit later this month or first thing in January. We have 47 different activities. It's pretty super cool. And then we are working on a bunch of big boulders. So the one that people usually ask me about is Microsoft 365 Archive and Backup. So Archive, public previews in January. Backup is coming soon. Special environments, we have GCC is done. GCC High is coming next. So if you're working in one of these special environments, SharePoint Embedded is also available to you. There's a ton of resources. I'm going to go ahead and paste these into the chat after I turn things back over to Vesa. And I think that's just about it. I will go back in here and answer all the questions that I find. But thank you very much.